Bet on Bears fans, another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the Designer back at it again. Courtney Cronin in the building as well. We got to talk about what we saw at Minicamp, and dare I say, we saw something that I can't remember ever seeing. An offense actually ahead of the defense. We got to talk about that. We got to talk about how heading into training camp, who is there to be excited about with this team? There's some pieces that I think are really people you can look towards. And Ben Johnson talked about some standouts as well. All that and more in today's episode of the Chicago Bears podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Today's episode is brought to you by the Advantage Dealer Group. Find your next Chevy, Toyota, or Acura and drive off in under 60 minutes, or they'll make your first car payment. Also brought to you by the Hard Rock Casino in Northern Indiana, Las Vegas style gaming. Just 30 minutes from Soldier Field, exit 6, right off of I-80-94. Courtney, how are you?
I'm good. Minicamp's over, and like many of the vets that will not be in attendance for OTAs next week, neither will I. I start my vacation a little early, but I was just talking with Cap and Hood about this, and the idea of like who's going to show up. We heard from Rome yesterday that he is. Do you think Caleb's coming next week? Because I sort of do. Because I'm like,
I think Caleb is coming.
What are they gonna do? Like sign a quarterback like off the street
Yeah.
for like a day to get them to throw the ball to players so it's not just Austin Reed? I think he's coming.
Yeah, I think Caleb will be there next week. It's the only, if Rome hadn't have said I'll be there, I had no shot of showing up. Now I'm like, okay, I might actually have to show up to this because I do think there's like, you can't have Rome there with who? Austin Reed or, well, Case we know isn't going to be there.
I don't think Tyson's got his birthday party.
Oh, it's true.
Got to go to the water park. Like he might still be recovering from the party at that point. I mean, you only turned 24 once, but it's gonna be like it's not the full deck obviously next week for the OTA,
Yeah.
and it was similar last year because remember they had the Hall of Fame game, they had the early mini camp, and then they had the extra OTA, which was just rookies. So it was important obviously for Caleb then because he was a rookie. He was still, this was all still brand spanking new for him. Yeah. And I remember he spoke at the end of that. We also, I believe, heard from Shane Waldron. It was, I just can't remember like the feeling I had leaving minicamp last year of being like, oh yeah, like he learned a lot this spring. He's going to be like ready to hit the ground and go when they come to training camp. I feel like naturally because it's year 2, I feel differently about that with Caleb, but the way that the offense looked Wednesday and Thursday this week to actually put together 2 good days back to back and not have much drop off, I thought was a really, no wonder they feel good about it up at Hallis Hall right now, where the offense got the best of the defense for a change, which typically doesn't happen during the offseason.
Yeah, and I thought yesterday, Courtney, and you tell me how you felt about it, but I thought yesterday was a day where it truly was the offense got the better of the defense, but not because the defense was playing poorly, because Caleb Williams and his receiving corps made some really difficult plays to move the ball down the field. Caleb Williams rolling to his left, throwing that football with that weird sidearm that he always does where the ball sails 60 yards. There were all of these moments, a tough throw to Rome over the middle that went through 2 DBs' hands. Like there were these moments where it was like, that's really good defense. And dare I say, you may just have a quarterback that can beat that.
Yeah, I'm looking at my notes from the 4-minute and 2-minute offense that they ran yesterday. And obviously the 4-minute one is where DJ, like a 14-yard touchdown to cap off the drive. Like that was a long drive too, because they started at their own 30. The 2-minute drive is the one where something broke down on that play where he throws the pick, sidearms, like cross body.
There was nobody on the right side of the field when I played.
Something was wrong there, but like even still, the catch that he had to Rome that was almost picked. If Josh Blackwell's arms were a couple inches longer, like that was still it was a tight window throw, and that's a throw that you expect Caleb Williams to make, just like we saw in the 2-minute drill 4-minute drill before that, the 4-minute offense. I'm looking at my notes. I'm like, Caleb crossbody, Caleb to Cole, Caleb to Forf, DJ, PAT good. Like there's a lot of him going out there, finding the open receiver, not forcing it, but finding the guy and being on time. Because remember what happened on Wednesday's practice at the end when he was late? And it was just a check down to Roschon Johnson, probably why he checked it down to Roschon. And Ben Johnson let him hear it. To me, that's what we saw Thursday was a byproduct of Caleb taking the coaching and Caleb listening to the coaching points and truly going out there and taking what the defense is giving him. You didn't feel like he was patting the ball too much, waiting, trying to force something to where he thinks it should go versus what's actually open and what windows are actually there. So that's a good feeling if you're Caleb, knowing I'm picking up the offense. It feels like I'm being able to play within structure better. And in these tight situations, I'm coming through for my team. Like they run the like we haven't seen them do the 4-minute offense much in
Yeah.
at this point of the
Minicamp,
off season.
OTAs, yeah.
Like yeah, like they do a lot of end of half, end of game stuff, which is good. They have to. Like they need to do that. They need to keep repping that stuff because think about how many one-score games they were in last year that they didn't win.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of blocks being stacked on top of each other right now based on what we're seeing them practice and what we're seeing the emphasis of. And I think Caleb's come away from these last 2 days knowing that when the lights do shine brightest, the thing that Ben Johnson said, as cliche as that may sound, they had 58 seconds yesterday, or excuse me, on that 94-yard touchdown drive to Kyle Monangai, and he came through. They were like all the way down, all the way back, near their own
Packed
end
up on
zone.
the end zone,
They
yeah.
had less than a minute. Like to see Caleb come through in that play, to just follow through on something is
Yeah.
impressive at this point of the offseason, knowing that there's a long way to go, but the positive signs are there.
Well, and I think too, right? Like we saw this from Caleb last season, where in the clutch, he was one of those guys that could get you in a position to win the game, or could score you the touchdown that wins you the game, and then you could not call a timeout and lose it on a Hail Mary by giving up 15 yards. But I think the problem that we saw, and my mind goes back to just minicamp, right? Last year when we were in minicamp, remember the praise on Caleb was he's ahead of schedule. He understands the playbook, and we're figuring this out. But the offense looked disjointed the entire time. It was like, okay, but like they're not on the same page and they're not figuring this out. Where he hasn't completed a pass to DJ here. Like these are moments we should be getting. It feels like not only is Caleb Williams on the same page coming out of this, and again, this is from day one of minicamp. I thought Caleb had a very up and down day, more down than up. You added on to that day 2. You got better. Day 3 this year, I'm talking about. You continued to build on what you learned in day 2 as an entire offense, not just Caleb Williams understanding the playbook. And I feel the same way about the defense. I think you said it perfectly. Josh Blackwell's in perfect position. His arms just weren't long enough to get his hand on the football. Like this mini camp, this OTA process doesn't feel like a win for Caleb Williams or Roma Dunze or DJ Moore. It feels like a win for the Bears. And that's something that we haven't left mini camp feeling in a long time, especially with an offense, dare I say, leading the way in the part where you're feeling good on that.
Because usually, and I mean, maybe it's just because Matt Eberflus was a defensive coach that, the defense is probably going to have more of an edge. I mean, honestly, for every team, it's typically like that.
Defense is usually ahead, yeah.
And a lot of times, defense has the script. I mean, most teams I've been around, the script, the scripted plays, defense has those, so they know what to prepare for. And I remember leaving minicamp the last couple of years, especially like, early on with Justin, it was like, whew, this is going to be an uphill battle. Year 2 under Justin, you thought, okay, maybe he's turning the corner. Or year 2 for me, like year 3 of him. And then,
it was just him throwing to DJ in that year.
Yeah, and that was
literally
that
just
was
DJ's
it. That was
down
the
there.
offense. And then last year, you hear the coaching staff say, nope, we're not holding anything back from the quarterback. Like we're, letting him, not giving him the playbook in May, but like we're letting him dive in when maybe they shouldn't have. Like very clearly, I just wrote a story about this today at ESPN.com about the film study element of how overwhelmed Caleb was in there. And obviously that comes from the Seth Wickersham book, but like how we heard Ben Johnson talk about it, Case Keenum talk about it, and all these other quarterbacks that I had a chance to interview for this piece of just like it's information overload for young quarterbacks where sometimes like yeah, you're really smart and everything, but sometimes it needs to be pared down to where you can get it like in digestible size bites before you're eating the whole meal. Like I feel like that's the approach that this coaching staff took with him this offseason, to where when they say Ben Johnson's obsessed with the details, you can understand why, because you got to get the details right before you get the whole project together. And I know that they've taken that approach with Caleb Williams because you're starting to see small things that were an issue last year that ended up snowballing into big things not following that same trajectory in minicamp this season.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? It's we've seen Ben Johnson so much more focused on the pre-play than the actual play. When we've heard, like, of course, right, we've heard Ben Johnson go off a couple of times here. He snapped a little bit when Caleb was late on that throw and stuff like that. But like, I've heard him yell about cadence in the in the huddle when you're calling the play, how you're calling the play, how loudly you're calling the play. Call the play like you're prepared. We've heard him yell about Cole Kmet being off the line a yard. We've heard, like, it's so much stuff pre-play, and I think, like, you mentioned bringing up hammering down the details, Courtney. I think wasn't until day one or like at the very end of practice that we saw one of our first flags thrown on the
Yesterday,
offenses
yeah.
and or defensive line. Yesterday, there were a couple more flags, but Andrew Billings was talking about that yesterday and said it was because Caleb got us with the hard count one time, and we got the O-line with a move call one time. So like, you're doing things, or these moments are coming up where it actually feels like on a day-to-day basis, you're getting to the point where the easy part of running the play is actually running the play because they understand kind of where they're at in the playbook right now. So
That's a
I
good
think
point.
that's such a difference from what we saw with Matt Eberflus, because last minicamp, the one thing we could say, and they kept telling us, well, the offense trying to figure it out. Flags everywhere.
Yeah, the pre-snap stuff, it matters, and it's not that you can just let them get away with it now, because that translates to bad habits. It translates to undisciplined football in season. Think about how many pre-snap penalties the Bears had during, Matt Eberflus's tenure, especially last year through those first like 11, 12 games. They were not a disciplined football team.
Yeah.
And Ben is a stickler for those sorts of details, and it might feel like it's a slow process when you're having to start plays over again, if you're not getting in and out of the huddle correctly, if Caleb is not saying the play correctly to what Ben Johnson, to his liking, then they're going to have to start that stuff over. So I think for the guys, it puts the onus on them of speeding up the process. Okay, I can't mess this part up. I have to be precise on all of the pre-snap stuff. Am I calling for the right motion? Like, do I need to flip the protection? Like, we've seen them, obviously, a lot of kill calls. Like, it just seems like they're getting tested at the line of scrimmage right now, which you want to see as many scenarios of those things as possible, a lot of those scenarios as possible right now, because that prepares you for when, like, it's loud, for when you don't have the ability just to start over and do the play again because it's a live game. And however they're coming up with the simulation for that stuff, I think it's working, because it just
Yeah.
feels like they're a much more confident team once the ball gets snapped, of knowing where to go, where the ball's going to, but also knowing that their quarterback's going to, throw to the open receiver. He's not trying to force things as much as he might have last year. Certainly at this point last year, it was a completely different animal because he was learning an offense. He's learning an offense this time around, but I feel like he has a better tool set to tackle some of the things that make learning an offense difficult, especially when he's, in the spot he's in now, where it's the ownership part, but it's also, Ben's giving me a scheme that I should be able to operate because it's based on me. It's not that we're trying to square peg round hole this thing. I think,
Yeah.
that's evident here, because it feels like he's more comfortable in the verbiage and everything else.
Yeah, listen, if they want to throw him off, I'd play at least 11 of the tracks from Carter 6 at practice to simulate some of the crowd noise, because my God. That don't throw you off, nothing will. One thing that I do want to get to here, and I think this is going to be very, you're leaving here feeling good about where the offense is at, where the defense is at. We've got one more OTA next week, which, Caleb may pull up to or not. And then you've got a ton of time off here. Coming back into training camp, who are you looking to as kind of like, okay, let's see what the next step is for this player here? Ben gave us some the other day, some people that stood out to him, talked about Ruben Hippolyte, talked about Dom Robinson. I think that was a name that kind of everybody in the media room went, oh, okay, all right, Dom Rob, he's looking bigger. He's looking like a big guy out there. Joel Wilson, who will not make this team. I love that he gave him the props, but no chance we're keeping a fourth tight end on this team. And then Kyle Monangai was somebody they brought up. Who are some people that you're looking forward to seeing?
those were some interesting names because think to the last coaching staff, you wouldn't get a list of guys. Like Ben really thought about that when the question was phrased, asked to him on Wednesday, said, "Ooh, let me think about that. I'll come back to you with an answer on Thursday." He did. And the Robinson one's interesting to me because I think everybody going into the offseason program from our side of things thought this guy is cut player walking, right? Like, depth at the very best, highest part of his ceiling, but probably somebody who's not on this roster. To hear Ben throw him, and maybe it's a coaching tactic. Obviously, you can't really judge the pass rush right now because they don't have pads on. But to hear
Yep.
him talk about a guy who was inactive all but 6 games last year and had one start as somebody who's really stood out, that raised, that was like, whoa, for me, that raised my antenna because I'm like, what is it? Is he doing something different this year, or is it Dennis Allen's scheme that might put him in a better position to get after to be an effective member of this pass rush from the edge position? I don't know which one it is now. And so that's
Right.
why I'm really curious to watch him in training camp try to fight for a spot behind Dayo Odeyingbo. They've obviously got Daniel Hardy. There's Jonathan Ford. There's a lot of depth on this defensive line. The depth to me is more interesting than the starting spots. Because it's Montez Sweat, it's Odeyingbo, it's Gervon Dexter, it's Grady, Jarrett, and it's Andrew Billings.
Yeah.
So you have like 5 for 4 spots, but you get what I mean. Behind them, though, because that's going to bring up the question I know that you and I are going to end up talking about a month from now. Do they need to sign another edge rusher going into training camp? Apparently, they feel at least decent about one guy who can be in that competition. So I look at that and I'm like, all right, I know where my eyes are going to be early on when they get in pads because they obviously
Yeah.
have the ramp up period. But that was intriguing because the conversation with this team has been they aren't deep enough in the defensive line just yet, specifically at edge. Maybe they are, but I just want to know what changed because this guy was all but off the roster last year. He was inactive for what's 17 minus 6? 11
11.
games? Like,
Yeah. Carter 6.
yeah. Like what the heck changed? That's wild to me.
You know what though? I will say this, and I don't know. Don Rob looked good, and he was somebody you could continue to watch when they were practicing right in front of us that first day. I was like, Don Rob is killing Darnell Wright right now, but there's no pads on, so you can't really go, okay. But if there's a pad on, right, is Darnell Wright going to push this guy out of the way? Is he going to be able to move him? More than likely, he's going to do a much better job versus Dominique Robinson. But what I think is intriguing here is Dominique Robinson. I believe his draft weight is 254. He looks like he has added some of that muscle mass that maybe you need to be in a Dennis Allen system. And Courtney, it may truly be we like what we're seeing because he has the speed, but also he's the only other guy on this team that seems like he's getting a little bit closer to that size
Hmm.
that Dennis Allen is looking for. And so maybe it truly is just a fit in this defense because your third edge rusher opposite of him would be Austin Booker. Austin Booker's 240. And I remember talking with Dennis Allen when we kind of had that round table. And what he ended up telling me was, I don't like my pass rushers 240. I like
Sure.
my guys in that 280 to 290 range. Well, I don't think that Dom Rob's going to get up that much, but if he's at that 265 kind of towards 270 range and he's giving you the kind of power that he should be able to have, he's a freak athlete. He's one of those dudes that, like, if he wanted to go play baseball, he probably could play baseball. If he wanted to play basketball, he probably could play basketball. He's truly just a freak athlete. Like, to me, those are the kind of players where if you find the right system for them, you can take advantage of that. And I wonder if Dennis Allen is seeing that early on.
That's at least like initial impression. I believe that Ben Johnson said that because like what he did yesterday when he singled Dominique Robinson out
Yeah.
because he sees something, he hears something from Dennis Allen about no, I know how to use this guy. I can get this guy to, let's not forget. And I know it was years ago, but this guy was a converted quarterback, converted receiver, converted to defense.
He's played like 4 positions from high school to now.
Like his body, I would, it'd be cool to see like a side by side of like each year of how much his body's probably changed. That because you're right, he
Yeah.
does look yoked. He looks like a bigger version of himself from even a year ago. So if you have the right coaches, if you have the right scheme and, defensive coaches that are going to put, especially with the line, like going to put those guys in position to get upfield and to get after quarterbacks, like maybe this is a chance for him to save his career. Like, not that he's a bad football player by any means, but he just wasn't the right fit in the last defense, which again, 4-3, similar base structure, but this is a different pass rush philosophy than they had with Matt Eberflus. So
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by that because we had been talking about this for a long time. They're not done on edge. They're not done at the edge. They're not done on the defensive line. They can continue to add, and they don't draft an edge rusher in the draft. And people are like, "Oh no! Like, what's going to happen? Are they just going to have to wait to see if they really want to pay for Trey Hendrickson via a trade or sign Von Miller? What are some of the other names that are being thrown out there right now? Like all these things that I'm like, maybe the answer's on your own team. Just a thought.
And to be honest with you, I thought it was, and I do want to put it with this, maybe this makes you feel a little bit worse about the situation, or you're like, well, I can kind of see that. He did mention when we were talking to him about Dominique Robinson, he said he had a quick first step. He lined up over our left tackles quite a bit here over the last few weeks. You could tell he had the edge over him a few times. The left tackle position is also one that is greatly still in question as we head into here. Me and you talked about that, where maybe Braxton Jones is still the number one here, but I'll say this, Courtney, and I got to give him his flowers. I know there's no pads on. The growth that we saw from Kiran Amegadjie from that first day where he was not standing up like on time, just didn't know what he was doing. And it was second day of install to where we were at yesterday, where he finished the day with the number one reps on that third day. Maybe that's a spot where they're feeling comfortable with Kiran there, but that could also be a reason why Dom Rob was getting the advantage.
Sure. Like, and obviously, like, neither of those two tackles I would expect. I mean, you're going against an experienced edge rusher, and you don't have experience playing left tackle with this offensive line in the NFL period. And also for, Ozzy, he's flipping to the other side. Like, I would expect, you would hope that the guy who's been at least like in the NFL for a year or two longer than both of those guys, 3 years now for
what did he get? 2 sacks on Trent Williams that first game, wasn't that?
We all thought, oh man, this 5th round pick is gonna be the standout of the Ryan Poles first time draft class. But I don't know. Like, yeah, like I heard Ben say that. I didn't take much away from it because they're not in pads. And that left tackle position's not complete right now. Like, if he's saying that against Darnell Wright, then that would be a little bit like, oh, maybe like that would raise some eyebrows. But I look forward to seeing how that position battle develops, because that one kind of felt like, not that it came out of nowhere, but it was a little surprising because in a team like this that has been constructed this way, the position battles right now are obvious. Left tackle being one of them. Do they need more running back depth? Are they good with what they have? And so, like, outside of that, you're like, I don't really know. Like, and obviously, like, we won't know about the tight end spot, who's tight end one, until Colston Loveland gets on the field and competes, because he's still like dealing with injury. But I that one surprised me a little bit. And so it's always interesting when you have a veteran team that's been constructed for a while now and finally feels like it's ready to put its foot on the gas for real. Like when these surprises like that pop up. And even hearing him say Monangai was somebody that impressed him. We talked about the 2-minute drill, the 58-second one that I pointed out from Wednesday. Like, Kyle was the one who caught that pass from Caleb at the end of the game, at the end of the drill, when they led the 94-yard touchdown drive. That's impressive for a rookie who 7th round pick, kind of coming in here with, a steeper climb to get a spot in that backfield when Roschon Johnson obviously has been here and is trying to do it too. That'll be a fun one to watch during training camp as well.
Yeah, the running back room is going to be interesting. I thought Kyle Monangai being mentioned was good, especially coming off of that day, because he wasn't a big pass catcher in college, not because he couldn't pass catch, and just because they weren't throwing the football. It was literally turn around, give it to Kyle, get out of the way. So it's good to see that he does have that skill. Of course, you want to see it, when the lights come on and the lights are brightest, because we've seen a lot of people be able to catch in practice and not be able to catch in the game. We're not going to relive that. I'll tell you one thing, and one player that I come out of this excited about, and I want to get your thoughts on this, because I think the step that we saw this year, and we've heard this from multiple defensive linemen right now, is Gervon Dexter not just on the field, but I think a surprising step is Gervon Dexter seems like he is becoming the leader of this defensive line. He is the one organizing the workouts. Andrew Billings talked about how he's taken Shamar Turner under his wing to teach him some things here. He's the one bringing the young players along and saying, "Let me show you how we do this at this level." I think I expected the step from Gervon in play. I don't know if I expected, with all of the names on here, Grady, Jarrett, Montez Sweat, Andrew Billings, maybe Dayo Odeyingbo is thrown in there as well. I haven't really seen his leadership on the field as much with the Colts, but like I didn't expect Gervon Dexter to be the name we'd be talking about as somebody emerging as a leader of this
I
defensive
think it's
line.
cool. It's probably a testament more so to the front office of knowing the type of player that they were bringing in, and even as a third-year player, he's willing to take on some of that leadership role because they were devoid of leadership up front last
Yeah.
year, and that's not a slight on anybody that was playing there. It just wasn't something that really had like somebody willing to like grab hold of the reins and say, okay, no, this is our unit. And they've got a lot of that, I think, on the interior of the defensive line. Obviously, Grady Jarrett was brought in here because he's a talented player, but he's also like played in the NFL for more than a decade and is clearly a well-established veteran who can be a leader. Andrew
Yeah.
Billings, same thing. Like that guy's the heart and soul of this defense. Look how bad they were when he got injured. Ben Johnson mentioned that of just like how it felt like they lost their step when he wasn't there. So naturally, if you're Gervon, you're going to follow suit with that because you see two other guys doing it and you're about to attempt to make the jump in your career. So I think hearing about like, and it was even not even like those two. Do you remember Justin Jones last year was talking
Yeah.
about, or I guess it was what
2 years
2 years
ago.
ago. Like even like then, like he was talking about Gervon and the type of career he thought he would have and what he saw from him like initially as a rookie. Like he's checking all of the boxes of the good things that people have said about him from the leadership standpoint, the effort standpoint, hard work, all of it. Like, and he's putting it in, like him organizing that workout that they all did in Miami.
Down in
Like,
Florida, yeah.
that's not a small thing to be able to get everybody's schedules to have the foresight to be like, no, I think we should all get here together. Like we see receivers do it often in the off season, quarterbacks and receivers, running backs, skill guys, but like you don't often hear about it from like the defensive line because usually the guys are all working out separately during the off season. But to hear them all come together for this pass rush camp, more or less, that they were all participating in. I think, and to hear a young player like Gervon Dexter taking it seriously and putting the onus on himself to get that done, I think is a really good sign.
Oh, yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? You usually that's a quarterback thing. Usually that's a leader of the team thing. And I do wonder how much of this is the coaching staff empowering these guys to be the leaders they need them to be, right? Because I think back to last season and the defense kind of it fell apart. I think really after Jaquan went out, you see him as so much of a vocal
Yeah.
leader on this team. He's calling so much out. I think he's so important to this Bears defense, maybe more important than people want to give him credit for. But I think that there was just that devoid of that leader who was going to organize everybody. And you don't really see that from the young guys early on, right? You saw Caleb Williams last year. He knew we should be calling a timeout here, but didn't want to
Hmm.
call a timeout because I don't want to overstep the boundaries of my head coach. I don't want to embarrass him or go against what he's trying to do. It feels like this coaching staff isn't coming in saying we're the leaders. Of course, you know they are, but saying we need you guys to take what we're trying to teach you and make sure everybody else is implementing it. And that's what we've seen here
Yeah,
early
I
on.
mean, the coaches set the culture, the players carry it out. And you can tell there's guys who are willing to rise to that level of being a leader who can then teach the rest of the group. Like, not everybody wants to lead that way. That's fine. Like, I think of Montez Sweat. Montez is not a rah rah leader. He's not the emotional leader. He's not somebody that, you're typically going to think of as like the let's galvanize everybody together. He leads by his play on the field. That's cool. That's how he wants to do it. That works. DJ used to be like that.
Yep.
And, for the better part of his career in Carolina, that was what he was known as. I think his leadership role here, just because of the type of room he's in as a receiver, has almost like forced him to change a little bit to
Become more vocal.
become more of an elder statesman. Like this is my
Yeah.
role. I can't not do this. But it is neat to see some of the players who have taken that on. I even think, someone like DeAndre Swift. like a quieter player, like, doesn't, isn't like the most fiery out there. Like even hearing him talk about, his experiences prior with Ben Johnson, but also like what his role is in this running back room. Guys seem excited to maybe do something that pushes them out of their comfort zone a little bit. And maybe they feel more empowered to do that. Like you got to wonder, like, what's the point that got them to where they are, where guys who weren't necessarily the most visible leaders before, or maybe didn't hold that role before because somebody else was in that position, it's not on the team anymore, whatever it is, it's unique to see, like, or it's cool to see rather, because it happens on every team. But like,
Yeah.
I think it's showing the Bears, hey, the strategy that they're working with of implementing what they're asking for, what they expect from their players, it's working because you have the buy-in there of guys who are stepping up and wanting to be leaders and wanting to see this thing succeed.
Yeah, and I think when you take the talent is great. There's a lot of talented players around the league, but when your talented players, especially your young players, start to turn into the leaders on your team, that's when you start to go, okay, oh, we might have something here that can actually be good for some years to come because they're going to set a culture that you're not going to let slip. And that's what J Mac always talks about when he comes on here. That happened when Lovey took over and all of these other pieces started to come in. All these young players started to feel, okay, this is my team now, and I'm going to be the one to dictate how things are done here. So hopefully we see that turn into more wins this season. Hopefully we see that turn into a better overall team experience because there has been just a complete lack of leadership on this team over the last couple of years, no matter how many people were on the leadership council. Before we get out of here, I want to hit one more thing because Courtney, we are going to get to see Aaron Rodgers play the Chicago Bears probably one last time, although I guess you never know with him with which
One last time with the Steelers, at least, because he's signing a 1-year contract.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
week 12, he dropped
it's
the
weird.
crumbs a couple weeks ago when he was on that podcast. And lo and behold, look, he ends up following through on this. And after all that, he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
What does a I feel like this could be the ultimate high and low, right? If you finish out with Aaron Rodgers beating you one more time in Soldier Field, that's the ultimate gut punch to a Bears fan, no matter how the season is going. But if you beat him, very similar. Now I don't want him to go down like Brett Favre did, but very similar. Last game versus Brett Favre in Minnesota, I believe it was, and that when they were playing at on the ice field, basically, and his career was ended that day. I think it may be one of those things where number one, Caleb Williams gets a chance to compete against the guy who is his idol as far as quarterbacks go and try and beat him. I think that could be very helpful. And two, just give the Bears another storyline feather in the cap of a first season of Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, all the what ifs that could come from this, and how much attention's going to be on that game, because we haven't seen Aaron Rodgers in Soldier Field in a couple of years now. The last time, I mean, most Bears fans will remember the whole "I own you" thing that he did, and the discount double check, and like all of that. It would be like if there's a lot riding on the Steelers this year. Mike Tomlin, we know, has never finished below 500 in a season as a coach. They went to the playoffs last year, but they also lost their last 5 games the regular season, I think, including the postseason loss. Last 5 games, like it
I haven't won a playoff game since
like,
2016,
can
Courtney.
you imagine what would happen if Aaron Rodgers goes there and they are not good, or like they're just not good enough in the AFC North? Like what that's going to do to jobs and all of that. And the
Yeah.
byproduct of that would be winning your regular season games, losing regular season games. That's week 12. We'll know a lot about, like, Caleb Williams and his ability to function in Ben Johnson's offense through the season. There might be some early season lumps. Like, go back to Ben's first year as an offensive coordinator in Detroit. It wasn't just the offense that they started out 1-6. Like the team was a struggle bus for the first 7 weeks of the season. That could, in theory, that could happen here too. It's a new offense, new
Yeah.
players, new coaching staff. It might take some time, but if they start rattling off some wins and they're a above 500 team, maybe they're a winning team. By the time the Steelers come to town and Aaron Rodgers comes to town, like I can't even imagine what the discourse is going to be like. going into that week, and how much like tangible energy you're going to be able to feel around that game. And this is weird, but it'll probably feel like Bears Packers just because it's Rodgers. And just because like you're seeing him again after a hiatus of the last 2 years.
And if I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong and misremembering, but is not the last time the Chicago Bears played the Pittsburgh Steelers? Isn't that the
Years ago.
Phantom? What was his name? Something Marsh. He ended up running into the referee. Cassius Marsh. What a pull. Ended up running into the referee.
And then he got a flag on the way. He's like running off the field, I think.
But it was like the ref almost like forced himself to run into Cassius Marsh to throw the flag. Like,
yeah, there's a video.
There is a lot of, because the Bears would have won that game. There's a lot of like storyline going into this game that I think is incredibly entertaining here. Aaron Rodgers makes it twice as much, especially with him already talking trash. And maybe I'm the only one that feels this way, but Aaron Rodgers has been the angel of death for a lot of coaches. And there's been a lot of discourse around Mike Tomlin over the last few years. If this doesn't go well, this might be the time where they go, we're going to just change a lot here, because you decided to bring in Aaron Rodgers to be the bridge quarterback for Will Howard.
It's weird how much they went all in on the Aaron Rodgers experiment this offseason when there were other options for them at quarterback, whether it could have come in the draft. And I know they drafted Will Howard in day 3. Like, he's probably not capable of being a starter just yet. But even before that, they could have addressed it. They could have traded for Kirk Cousins. They could have gotten in on the Sam Darnold sweepstakes. Like, whatever they wanted, they could have re-signed Justin Fields. Like,
I was going to say, Courtney, you could have kept 2 of the guys you had on your team.
But they've put a lot of eggs in his basket. If he doesn't deliver, like, I really think that there are going to be a lot of people out of jobs in Pittsburgh. It's a weird person to hedge all your bets on.
Especially with Arthur Smith as the OC. It's just, there's a lot of weird there. But hey, hopefully it doesn't matter here in Chicago, and the Bears go out there and absolutely sack Aaron Rodgers 13 times, all done by Dominique Robinson. We appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. For Courtney Cronin, it's your boy Pat the Designer, back at it again. We'll keep you guys posted with everything Chicago Bears coming next week. One more OTA practice that we'll get to see, and we'll see how that ends up going and if anyone will even be there. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Bear down. One love.